Welcome back to Community Engagement Essentials. This is Module 4 and also the last module of this course. In this module, we are going to be discussing designing and planning community engagement activities. These are the learning objectives, and you will be learning how to set clear objectives and goals for your community engagement initiative. Also, you'll be learning how to choose suitable engagement methods based on community context and objectives, as well as develop comprehensive engagement plans that outline activities and timelines. You are also going to be learning how to allocate resources efficiently to ensure successful engagement implementation. And lastly, you are going to be learning about the crucial skills in implementing community engagement initiatives. Let's talk about designing your community engagement activities. In the previous module, we have talked about planning for your community engagement initiative. And there we talked about mapping of stakeholders, taking account of assets within the community, embarking on need assessments. We have talked about how to conduct SWOT analysis on the initiative you are proposing. Now, when you are designing your community engagement activities for your initiative, you need to set clear goals and objectives. That is the first step. It is important for you to set clear goals and objectives because this will serve as a foundation for whatever you will be carrying out in your community engagement efforts. So what are goals? Goals are the overarching vision or purpose that provide a general direction, while objectives are specific, measurable, and time-bound steps that are designed to help achieve those goals. Let's look at the differences between goals and objectives. Here listed, we have 4 differences between goals and objectives. So these are the 4 major differences between goals and objectives. For goals, they are broad and general. So goals, they are broader and more general statements that describe what you want to achieve. They set the direction and provide a sense of purpose. They also represent long-term outcomes. Also, they are less specific. Goals are not as detailed or specific as objectives, and they don't include measurable indicators. Emotional and inspirational, yes. Goals can be emotionally motivating. So your goals can inspire you, can inspire your team members, can inspire your stakeholders to work towards a common vision. So let's look at objectives. Objectives are specific and measurable. So objectives are usually specific, detailed, and measurable. They define clear, quantifiable targets that need to be met. They also are for shorter term. So objectives are usually set for shorter periods, such as during an initiative that is set to be carried out within a specific time frame. They are also action-oriented. So objectives are action-focused and they describe this the precise steps or actions that are needed to achieve a goal. Lastly, objectives are realistic and achievable. So objectives are set with a realistic expectation of accomplishment. Let's look at setting SMART objectives. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So your objectives must be SMART. Your goals must be clearly defined, but your objectives must be SMART. So those are the major differences between goals and objectives. We have talked about the differences, the major differences before. But for your objectives, it has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So specific, who and what? What exactly? If it is directed to a group of people, who are this group of people? So for example, your community engagement initiative, what community? Who are these people? So it has to be specific. Measurable, by how much? How can you measure your activities? So your objective, the objective you will be setting, how can you measure this objective? Achievable. How is it achievable? So you need to be honest with yourself, so that when you are setting your objectives, you need to set achievable objective. You shouldn't set an ambiguous objective that you know that you won't be able to achieve. Relevant. Why are you carrying out this initiative at this particular time? Why? Does it align with the goal? Does it align with the goal of your community initiative? Does it align with the goal of your other stakeholders? That is it being relevant. Time bound. When do you want to achieve this particular objective, especially for the initiative you want to carry out? From which time to what time? So you need to you need to be specific about when do you want to start and when you want to finish. So your objectives must be time bound, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So let's look at examples of goals and objectives. These examples are aligns with the initiative you may want to be embarking on the European Parliament election campaign program you are being trained for. So let's look at these examples. I'll be giving examples that aligns with the European Parliament election campaign program that you will be doing after you finish your training. So let's look at this goal. This is an example. So if your goal is to encourage marginalized and racialized community to encourage marginalized and racialized communities to vote during the European Parliament elections. So let's say this is your goal. Then your objectives could be these three objectives. So now you are going to be looking at these objectives and ticking off the checkbox if they are actually SMART. Remember, SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So let's say that your goal is to encourage marginalized and racialized communities to vote during the European Parliament elections. That is the goal. Let's say that is the goal of your community engagement activity. Now, your objective could be, let's look at objective number 1. So these are examples of objectives that could fall under this goal. So you could have all these objectives. You could maybe have one of them. This is just an example. So you have to come up with your own goal and objectives depending on what you want to do in your community engagement effort. So objective: increase the knowledge and awareness among 500 racialized young EU citizens aged 18 to 25 on the importance of voting and election process by 80% by March 2024. Now let's look at this. Specific. Is it specific? Yes, it is specific because you are targeting 500 racialized young EU citizens. You are specific by who. Remember our SMART, who and what. So look at this. Who? Young EU citizens. So what? You are increasing, your objective is to increase the knowledge and awareness. Okay? Then is it realistic? Is it measurable? Measurable. You can see the indicator here. Your objective is to increase the knowledge and awareness by 80%. So this is an indicator. That means it is measurable. That means before you start the activity, you need to measure the level of knowledge and awareness and compare it with after you have started. If you are able to increase it by 80%, then that means you have actually achieved your objective. So you need to have an objective that is measurable. So by this 80% here is the indicator that you can use to measure your outcome. So achievable. Is it achievable? 500 racialized young people. So if you are starting your community engagement initiative, let's say January, so between January and March, you can decide to divide this 500 into bits. So you can decide to maybe target 50 young EU citizens per week. So if you have that, if you are looking at working with young EU citizens 50 per week, you can decide to make it 10 per day. So looking at how you are breaking it down, it is actually achievable. So within 3 months, you can reach out to 500 racialized youth. You can decide to break it into weeks. You can decide to break it into months. You can decide to break it into days. So looking at this, it looks achievable. So is it realistic? Can you increase the knowledge and awareness of these racialized young people on the importance of voting and election process? Is it realistic? So if it is realistic, does it align with the goal of your community engagement initiative? Does it align with the goal of other stakeholders too? So let's say other key stakeholders, for example, your funders. So your funders here is diaspora vote. So your objective here, is it realistic? Does it align? Does it align with the goal of your stakeholder, with the goal of your own team members? So looking at this, looking at the goal, the overall goal is to encourage marginalized and racialized communities to vote during the EP election. So if you are increasing their knowledge and awareness. It will encourage them, because by the end of whatever initiative that you are doing to increase their knowledge, by the end of that training, they would be encouraged to vote, because they now understand the importance of voting and election process. So let's look at objective number 2. You can have an objective like conduct 6 roadwork campaigns within 3 weeks in major cities across Belgium to boost voter turnout by 50% in marginalized communities compared to the previous election. So this is an objective. Is this objective smart? Is it specific? Yes, it is specific, because you are looking at conducting 6 roadwork within 3 weeks. So that means it is specific. Who? What? Major cities. You are specific that it is across Belgium. Is it measurable? Yes, we have the 50% indicator here. Then, is it achievable? Can you conduct 6 roadwork within 3 weeks? So if you want to spend 3 weeks, that means you can break it down. You can decide to have 2 roadworks in a week across different cities in Belgium. So it seems achievable. Is it realistic? Kind of. I think it is realistic, because if you look at the goal is to encourage them to vote. So when you conduct roadwork campaigns, then these roadwork campaigns, the aim is to boost the voters turnout. So what you are going to be doing during the campaign depends on what you think can be done to encourage them to vote. So let's look at number 3, which is the collaborate with 10 local authorities to ensure polling stations in 5 marginalized communities are easily accessible for all residents, addressing any physical or logistical barriers during the EP election. So looking at it, does it conform with the SMART objective? Is it specific? Yes, you are. This example is looking at collaborating with 10 local authorities to ensure polling stations in 5 marginalized communities. So it is specific. Is it is it measurable? Yes, it is measurable, because you already have the polling stations you will be working with, and you are going to be checking how easily it's accessible. So with whatever that happens on the election day, how accessible that polling station is, you are going to be collecting data, and from this data you are going to be measuring it. So it is measurable, because you are going to be checking if it actually addressed physical or logistical barriers. So this statement, addressing any physical or logistical barriers, is what you are going to be measuring. Is it achievable? Of course, looking at it, 10 local authorities. When you collaborate with 10 local authorities to ensure that 5 marginalized communities, so all these local authorities can actually help you with ensuring that these polling stations are well accessible. So is it realistic? Does it align with the goal of your community initiative? Does it align with the goal of other stakeholders? So since the overall goal is to encourage marginalized and racialized communities, so this objective, which states that collaborate with authorities to ensure that polling stations in marginalized communities are easily accessible. So when polling stations are accessible, it will actually encourage people to vote. So it's a good objective that can, lead to achieving this goal. So I didn't talk about time bound in the first objective. So it has, since the first objective has a specific timeline, so by March 2024, that means it is time bound. So for the second objective, the time bound is the 3 weeks here. So it has time bound, it has time range. So your objective have to be time bound. So for the third one, the time is during the EP election program. So during the EP elections, that is the time. So it has time. So this is another example. So let's say the goal here is to increase the number of MEPs from persons of color and with disability at the European Parliament by 50% in the next 5 years. So we can see that this goal is ambitious, it is emotional and inspiring, and it is long term. So 5 years. Okay. Now, what are the things? So for you to create your objective, you look at the actionable steps that you can take to achieve that goal. So that forms your objectives. So it's like breaking down your goal to actionable steps. So when you break down your goals to actionable steps, those actionable steps forms your objectives. So looking at this goal, let's look at the actionable steps that can help you to achieve that goal, that can help you to realize that goal. So looking at these objectives, let's look at these two major objectives. So for you to achieve the goal, the objective could be to establish a comprehensive database that contains profiles of 200 persons of color with disability, individuals interested in politics across 10 EU countries by December 2024. So you can decide to take these actionable steps that will help you to achieve the goal. So establishing a comprehensive database could be one of the actionable steps that would lead to the increase in the number of MEPs from the POCWD. Because when you know these people, when you have a comprehensive database, you'll be able to reach them. So this could be one of the steps that will help you achieve the overall goal of increasing the number of MEPs that are persons with disability, persons of color with disability at the European Parliament by 50% in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years. So objectives, objective number 2 could be that to provide comprehensive training to 300 POCWD individuals, which will enable them to acquire essential political skills, progressing from level 0 to 8 within 2 years. So when you look at this objective, you would say that it is looking like an actionable step that will help achieve the goal of increasing the number of MEPs from persons of color with disability community. Because when you provide comprehensive training to this individual that enables them to acquire essential political skills, when they acquire essential political skills, it might encourage them, it might equip them to get elected to the European Parliament. It will encourage them to come out for elective positions at the European Parliament. So these objectives look like it's a good actionable steps to achieve the overall goal of increasing the number of MEPs that are persons of color with disability. So analyzing this objective, you would see that they are smart objectives because they are specific. We have 200 POCWD here. They are measurable. They are achievable, they are realistic, and they are time bound. You can see December 2024, and you can see within 2 years in the second objective. So let's look at planning your community engagement activities. So you have designed your community engagement activities, then you want to plan. So when planning, you need to choose appropriate engagement methods. You need to choose appropriate engagement methods. So it is important to choose appropriate engagement methods because it helps you to align with what can work with the community you are working with. So when you choose appropriate engagement method, it directly influences the success of your initiative, because using the wrong method can lead to disinterest or misunderstanding among community members that you are engaging with. So using the right method can facilitate meaningful conversations and encourage active participation. Therefore, it is important to carefully consider the kind of method you want to use in your community engagement initiative. So it is important that you select engagement method based on the fact that the voices of the community are heard and the desired outcome is achieved. So you need to explore different methods. You need to explore different methods. You need to check town halls. You can decide to see how effective town hall meetings can be. You can decide to also carry out focus group discussions. You can decide to use surveys. You can decide to use workshop depending on the kind of audience. So remember, we talked about target audience in the previous module. So if your target audience, let's say they are elderly and they are not really tech savvy, that means you are going to be using maybe town hall meetings to engage with them because they would mostly prefer the physical meetings. They will mostly prefer the physical meetings. So if your target audience are young people which are tech savvy, you can decide to use online forums, you can decide to use surveys, you can decide to host virtual workshops. So you need to explore different methods that suit your audience. So you need to consider the objective of your community engagement activities, your audience preferences, and available resources. So it is important to also check your available resources. So if your resources covers only online forums, because online forums are cost effective and you don't have that resources much, you can decide to use online forums and make sure that you are you are achieving something valuable from the kind of engagement methods you are choosing. So all of these objectives, audience preference, and available resources play a key role in choosing your engagement methods. So combining multiple methods for a comprehensive approach, you can decide to combine all the methods to ensure that you achieve a comprehensive result. So you can decide to combine town hall meetings with surveys, with interviews, with focus group discussion, with workshops, with online forums. So using all these methods will help you to achieve a comprehensive result.